Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we are going to talk specifically about Dungeons & Dragons, Ginny D, and journalism. All right, let's jump into this. Okay, so something really shocking happened recently. I was really shocked to see it, but once it happened, I realized it was clicking into something I had seen before. So let's jump into this, okay? So we are quickly arriving at a nexus, right? I love Fortnite. I play. I'm incredibly blessed. An ex-friend, someone who used to be a good friend of mine, and now we're bitter rivals. No, we're not rivals. We're kind of enemies at this point. We do not hang out anymore. My friendships don't desiccate and die. They just like slam into a wall and shatter. It's kind of weird. But this dude got me into Fortnite probably about 2 years ago. And I play a lot of Fortnite. And one thing that's really incredible is my wife started playing with me. And she's now better than I am, which is pretty incredible. And it's something that we share together. We really enjoy it together. And our account, we just crush on our account. Like, we get the battle pass and we just, like, slam it to the ground. Like, we just crush it, right? Because we're both playing each day. And, like, I get victory royale. She gets all the goals done, you know. It's pretty cool, right? But in Fortnite, there's this rift. And when you hit the rift, it ejects. It's like this sparkling, shattering nexus point. And it slams you into the sky. And then you fall down from the sky, and you essentially kind of parachute down, right? So we are reaching this point in Dungeons & Dragons, a nexus point, like this point of a shattering portal, right? That is going to send us in different directions that nobody expected, right? And it is this issue of, and I'm so here for it. I'm loving it, right? Like, Ginny D right now is massively confused, right? She just finished a video. And it is her interviewing Kyle Brink, okay? And Kyle Brink is the D&D studio lead, and he is essentially the main point person right now that Hasbro assigned to clean up and do public relations. And everybody says that like it's it's two dirty words, like, oh, they're doing PR. Hasbro is Hasbro gets in so much trouble for being a corporation. I got a little bit of news for you guys. Hasbro is a corporation, right? Like, it's like, oh my gosh, Hasbro filed its taxes. What are they doing? Like, they filed their quarterly report, or like, you're like, they're a corporation. Why does it, like, the whole world is like, look at that person standing in that lake. I'll bet they're wet. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so bad. Anyway, okay. So, Ginny D, right? She just did this whole video where she interviews Kyle Brink, right? We're going to talk about it in depth, but at the end, she says, hey, can I get back to pretending I'm an elf and making funny videos? And the answer's no, you can't. If you want to do that, right, go cover OSE, right? Go cover Old School Essentials. Go cover Pathfinder. Go cover, Dungeon Crawl Classics. If you want to have fun and, like, pretend that it's all fun and pretend it doesn't, and do something that doesn't matter and is just about the lols, get off Dungeons & Dragons. It's clear as day, right? Dungeons & Dragons is not about the lols. It's about extinction events, right? In 1983, a group came to end it. In 2023, a group came to end it. And the reason these groups are powerfully attracted to end Dungeons & Dragons and promise its utter destruction and burn its books digitally and literally, right, is because you look at Dungeons & Dragons, you go, that ain't a game, right? Like, it's like if you're out in the woods, right, and you see something scurrying and you're like, that ain't a raccoon, right? Like, it's something different, right? And people keep slamming into walls because they don't get this, right? So here's what I want to share with you today, right? And okay, so Ginny D interviews Kyle Brink, and so Hasbro sends Ginny D an email, and it says, "Hey, do you want to interview Hasbro employee, Dungeons and Dragons D&D studio lead, Kyle Brink, and get every question you have answered about what happened to the OGL in January of 2023, right?" So Ginny D comes on and she says, "Hey, I'm going to show you the interview I did with Kyle Brink, but I need you to understand this. When I got this email, I decided that I would only do this email if Hasbro met my demands. And here were my demands. I get to determine every question. I am not receiving a question list. I will not be limited to the questions I ask. I get full edit power. I get to edit. I will record my interview with Kyle Brink. I'll only show what I want to show. I'll cut stuff out if I want. I'll show the whole thing if I want. I get full 100% edit power, right? Furthermore, Ginny D demanded from Hasbro, right? And she was right to demand this. I think she did a great job. It's fine, right? She had every right to do what she's doing here, but I want you to see the dissonance, right? Let's get all the way there. All right, so she says, also, when I'm done with the content, when I'm done with the video, right? First of all, only I record. You don't record on your end, right? And when I'm done with the video, you don't see it before I put it up. I put it up without you getting any consent to what's put up. I edit it any way I want, and I put it up the way I want, right? And then she said further than that, she said, I get to use the video, and I could use it for whatever I want, and you get to use nothing, Hasbro. You know what those are? Those are Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist demands, okay? This is Ginny D, okay? Ginny D dresses up like a witch. Ginny D dresses up like an elf. Ginny D dresses up like a centaur, okay? She is essentially a D&D commentator who LARPs, right? And where we have arrived, right, is that Dungeons & Dragons is at a point where a woman who her favorite thing to do in the world is wear an elf costume and talk to herself and make D&D jokes, is now making Pulitzer Prize winning journalist demands. Do you understand where we are, right? And and she doesn't understand she is a journalist. I reached out to Teo Sabadi and Sean Merwin. They're on Mastering Dungeons, and I said, you guys did a terrible job, right, with your summary of what happened with the OGL. They call it the OGL controversy. I call it the 2023 Manic Panic, right? You guys did a terrible job covering it because you never mentioned D&D Be Gone. There were thousands of people who promised to end Dungeons & Dragons forever, exactly like happened 40 years ago. And you are doing D&D coverage, but you're leaving things out, which is woefully irresponsible, right? And I called them out because they're doing journalist work, but they're pretending they're not journalists, right? Same thing. Ginny D is doing journalist work and pretending she's not a journalist. She's literally making Pulitzer Prize winning journalist demands and pretending she's not a journalist, right? And this is the issue. We don't have any D&D journalists. There are 0 of them. There are D&D commentators who are taking the position of D&D journalism. The absolute worst is the character sheet over from mycomicbook.com. They have the most stilted, slanted, most biased, outrageously unfair coverage I have ever seen applied to Dungeons & Dragons. It is abominable, right? And so we've arrived at this place where we desperately need D&D journalists, but no one will take the crown of D&D journalist. And that's a problem. That is a very real problem. And we've reached a point where it's gotten to the point of ridiculousness, right? We have Ginny D, right? Ginny D, a woman who dresses up like an elf and talks to herself and tells D&D jokes, who ends her video desperately begging you to let her return to having fun, and there will be no fun on D&D. There's only protection. There's only protection. There's only protection right? Because there are zealots coming to burn books digitally and literally. And there always will be. Because D&D resonates at a frequency. It's a dog whistle, right? And anyone who is smart and looks at Dungeons & Dragons goes, that's not a game, right? And they say one of two things. They say, I will dedicate massive portions of my life to it. That's what I did. Or they say, I will destroy it. I will end it. And they all have different reasons, but those are the only two outcomes for Dungeons & Dragons, right? And I will admit, there's a few fools left in the center who keep thinking, oh, Dungeons & Dragons is about fun. And then they slam into a wall when they realize no one wants D&D to be fun, right? It is treasure or it is something that must be destroyed. That are the only two actual responses to D&D. And people who stay in the middle and think it's something fun, that it's not something to be protected, or it's not something to be destroyed, right? And you should think it's something to be protected. It's not something to be destroyed. That is a desperate, horrible overreach, right? Which was reached in 1983 and was reached in 2023 and has been revision deleted. The history has been revision deleted by Sean Merwin and Teo Sabadia on Mastering Dungeons, by Ginny D when she explained it, and by many, many other commentators who are explaining what happens and leaving out the D&D Be Gone, pretending that the OSR, the Orc, and the OGL 1.0 champions did not come and promise to end Dungeons & Dragons. So here's where we're at. When we reach a point where a woman who LARPs and commentates about D&D is making Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist demands, it means we've reached a point where we desperately need D&D journalists and have zero of them. And that's a problem. That's a serious, serious problem, right? And we are in a very, very strange space, right? I take Ginny D's complete lack of self-awareness, complete lack of, and you could see it, right? In the beginning of the video, she's making Pulitzer Prize winning journalist demands, and at the end begging to put on her elf suit again, right? She has no understanding of what her life is, right? Or what Dungeons & Dragons is. And that's why we keep running into these major problems, because there's so much dramatic confusion, right? And we're walking through it together. We're going to get to the other side of all this. And D&D is going to be kept safe by those who know what it is and are willing to protect it. Every word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments, send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.